What about Tottenham? Said to be planning to open contract talks with Conte next month. His current deal expires at the end of the season. The club had an option to extend it by a further 12 months. Simon, what's your take on this? With big payoffs needed for sackings, I mean, boardrooms, should they be in the market now of tying elite managers down in the longer term?
Yes, I've always felt that it's strange that players have a commercial value, and it's changing now, but managers don't, and yet you entrust managers to build teams and you spend money on players because of the manager's choices.
Yeah.
So I've always felt that there's an inherent...
Was he always your best paid employer, your manager?
Towards the end, I felt it was appropriate to make them so, because when football became so dynamically driven by the finances and it became so evident it was going in one direction...
yes or no?
There was a balance. No, it's not, because it's a qualified answer, because you have to think it through and look at the reality of what you're paying players against what you're paying managers, and the reason why you'd pay a manager more. Now, no one should know what a manager's on. Players will sit in a dressing room and discuss it amongst themselves because that's the level that they're at. But a manager's salary shouldn't be privy to anybody.
But why did you take your time to make the decision to pay the manager?
Because as the game evolved and changed through the 2000s, and as my relationships with managers became more sophisticated, so my awareness of the requirement became more finessed. You look at it differently, and certain managers deserve less and certain managers deserve more. But because
that's waffle, isn't it?
No, it's not. But it's the two biggest commodities in football are gossip and money. They are the two biggest commodities, and they run hand in hand sometimes. So what I did was I looked at it differently and evolved. And of course, what you do is you fall into the trap of buying players, paying them the most, and then you look at it and go, well, hang on a bloody second here. Who's the most important person? Ultimately, the manager. He's my champion. He's the reason why I'm going to buy players.
Did you evolve in a way where you wanted more of a say in who you were buying?
No, in fact, I regressed.
Hand on heart?
Categorically, I regressed. I was young, dumb, and the other thing when I walked through the door, because ultimately you believe that you can translate from one industry to another. You find out really quick.
Like they all do.
You do, but notwithstanding, like you do when you went from being a player to a manager. You wouldn't have appreciated someone going, you know what, you don't know anything as a manager. You'll learn as you go. So the bottom line is you walk in the door, you go, this is how I want it to be. You find out, actually, you know what, before you can do that, you better know the vagaries and peculiarities of the industry. And then you go, well, hang on, so what do I want a dog and bark for? Let these guys do it. That's what I've got in.
You see it all the time, Simon. You see it all the way through football. You see it at Chelsea right now. You get people who have made money in different fields, entrepreneurial types, made lots of money, come in. This game is simple.
Yeah, but that's what you guys
and
like
it's not simple
to do. Nothing's simple, Graham. No industry is simple, and it's
but
no
these
different
guys,
than yours.
If you want to go back to Abramovich, the people at Man City early on, Ellis Short,
of course,
Morris at Derby, Moshiri at Everton, the chap at Chelsea, everyone thinks coming into football is easy, and then they end up listening to their own people.
And then what they do very quickly is, if they're bright enough, they pivot, right? What you guys don't do in management is you never pivot, right? You stay the same way, the same attitude, the same outlook. What owners do, and what people in authority do, if they've got any brains about them, is they go, I think I can do the same thing in football. Oh, sod it, no, I can't. I tell you what, I'll let them do it.
Well, you see how I didn't bite when he threw a hand grenade at me?
No, you did well there.
See, the problem today, for these guys that come in who are super, and they're not rich, they're super rich.
Yes, indeed.
They have access to enormous funds. Yep. They end up spending tens of millions of pounds of the club's money before they realise, I just don't...
Tens of millions of pounds of whose money?
Players.
Whose money?
The public's money.
Their money most of the time, because there's a gap between what the club makes and what the club loses.
Abramovich and the people at Man City. But, well, let's talk about Chelsea. He's spent a couple £100 million already.
Correct, yeah. They didn't have a couple of £100 million in the bank, by the way.
Yeah, and whether he's learned his lesson already in one window, but he will learn that it's not as easy as he thinks it is. He announced himself as, why am I talking about Chelsea? He announced himself as a sporting director.
He didn't. He didn't.
He announced himself.
No, he didn't.
As the man making the decisions.
Well, there was a spell that he did.
But let's be clear. Unless it's your checkbook, right? You aren't making the decisions. You're being allowed to make decisions. So at the end of the day, Todd Boehly was always going to be the person making the decision. What he did was, he did the very thing that people should do when they come into a new industry, is avail himself of what's going on around him, learn, and then go, right, I tell you, now I know what I want.
But he didn't.
But that's your version of events. And that's Gary Neville's version of events.
No, it's
a Sky trait.
He got rid of the three people who were involved in what trait?
A Sky trait. The know-nothing game.
He got rid of three people who were making the football calls.
No, that's
the lady there.
That's an assumption.
And Peter Cech. Well, I'm looking at a football club.
You're looking at people that worked for Roman Abramovich.
So you think
the
that was
first
a good
thing that
move?
happens is when a regime changes. Do you imagine Bruce Buck's going to stay there when you've got a new chairman? So the dynamic is
think
that
you learn
things
from
change,
them.
managers change.
I think you learn from
managers coming
he
back
was
when
coming
stuff go.
from baseball, his sport.
So when you walk in the door as a manager, the first thing you
Hold
do,
on, we'll
the first
come
thing
on
you do is
circles.
get rid of all the backroom stuff.
So you're saying
But you don't give them a
his
chance, do
moves
you?
were a smart move when
We're
he
a
walked
long way
into
from
Chelsea.
talking about Tottenham and Conte, aren't we?
When he walked into Chelsea, you think getting rid of all the football people is a way to go forward?
Well, it depends.
Yes or no?
Hang on.
Oh, yes or no?
In a different guise,
He
you
has
would
a
say
problem
Bruce,
answering yes or no.
No, because it's not a yes or no
I've noticed
answer,
that.
right? Because what you want is a binary answer. It's not binary.
It was a simple
In a different
question.
discussion, you would never say Bruce Buck and Marina were football people. You'd
Why
say
are you
Peter
putting
Cech
a
was.
strange face when you?
Because it's almost like inconsequential, the arguments and the answers
you have
you
to
put
say
forward.
that under them, they'd done well in terms of what players they brought in. So then a new guy comes in who his background is not soccer, and he
Right.
said, "I tell you what, I'm going to spend 200 million quid."
And
I'm
Chelsea not winning the league for 6 years, winning the Champions League, a knockout competition, which is commendable, right?
Those three
is
people
doing well. Spending 200 million a season is doing well.
Those three people there have been responsible for some of the success that Chelsea enjoyed.
They haven't won the league for 6 years. They won the Champions League. They spend £200 million a season, with the exception of one season. Well, hang on, where they got the club
Emphasise the Champions
sanctioned
League.
for their policies of stockpiling young
Emphasise
players.
the
Is that
Champions
doing
League.
well then?
You cannot say that Chelsea have not been successful.
No, they have been successful, but we're talking
Not
over the
good.
last 5 years when Peter Cech's been in there.
Well, I'll come back to it. You take up. Forget we're talking about football. You walk into a business, and it's not, you're going from one country to the other. So you enter into a business you know nothing about. I tell you what I'm going
Agreed.
to do. I'm going to get rid of all my experienced people.
But that's your
Is that a smart move?
that's your assumption that they got rid of the
Well, let's
people
see
in
where
the
to
room.
go with it. Well, I tell you where my assumption is
There was
coming
a
from.
clean out, Simon.
No, that's your assumption that people didn't decide they wanted to go somewhere. You're never going to retain Bruce Buck, are you? He's the chairman of the business. You've bought a business. You're going to put yourself in position. You're going to look around you and go, okay, who, what, when, and why. Peter Cech may want to go do something else. We're assuming that a stupid guy, by the way,
He's not
has got more
stupid.
money than God, right? Has walked through the door and he's so stupid that what he's going to do is go, it's my way or the highway. Now you might be right. But it's the easy choice. It's the red top choice. Say that's
Well,
what he did,
okay, we'll put it another way then.
rather than
Assuming
actually
you're
there was a
correct.
whole landscape change
Assuming
underneath
you're
him.
correct, would the wise thing to do is not keep these people close to you for a period of time so you could learn from them?
Depends on the people that are there and their personalities. Because the wise thing for
so
me
the-
to have done was kept Steve Coppell. The fact he was an argumentative, belligerent, negative sod that drove me insane within 15
bet
minutes
those
was
two
not the
got on
wise
well.
thing.
Oh, I'd love to have been a fly on the wall on that one. Listen, get it back to the square root of goal. If you were Daniel Levy,
Yes.
would you extend Conte's contract?
Yes.
Right.
Because
right.
I think
long
he's,
term.
yes, absolutely. Because
Yeah.
the consequences of Conte not being in situ are Tottenham going back to mediocre.
Yeah.
I think he's a
Incidentally-
great manager.
Jim White and Simon Jordan. Monday to Friday mornings from 10 on AM, on DAB, via the talkSPORT app and on your smart speaker. talkSPORT.